بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. وعن أم المؤمنين أم عبد الله عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها قالت قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. رواه البخاري ومسلم. وفي رواية مسلم من عمل عملا ليس عليه أمرنا فهو رد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Today's hadith number 5. It is narrated on the authenticity of al-Mu'mineen, Abdullah Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And as promised, inshallah, first we'll talk about the narrator of the hadith, in this case, the mother believers of the Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. And then inshallah we'll move on to the actual hadith and speak about the hadith. First of all, if you look at the words that the author, Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi uses, he brings two titles of the Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. The first title is al-Mu'mineen, and the second title he brings Abdullah. Now, taking a moment and explaining each of these titles, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in one hadith he described himself as a father figure to the believers. And as a father looks after his child and does tarbiyah of his child and takes care of the small things of his child and makes sure that his child grows up, and when growing up he has all the right characteristics and the right ingredients to be a successful person, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for our ummah has done the exact same thing. That he has done our tarbiyah and he has cared for us more than, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us, but more than we do for our own children. That Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِي وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مِّنْهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ شَأْنٌ يُغْنِيهِ. That on the day of judgment, our mothers and our fathers, our children and our spouses, they will run away from us and they won't want anything to do with us. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in another hadith, he describes that a man will come to his wife and he will ask his wife that, tell me, what kind of husband was I? How was I as a husband? And she will begin to say that, you're a pretty good husband. You remember my birthdays, you remember our anniversaries, you took me out once a week, you got me nice clothes, I didn't have to drive a shabby car. Everything was pretty good in the world. And this man will now say to his wife that, look, I'm up on the scale. All my deeds are up on the scale, and I'm short of one deed. For everything that I did for you and how nice I was and how caring I was and how loving I was, how about you lend me one deed? Give me one deed. And this wife will now turn her situation like, you're a nice husband. You could have done better, right? Get out of here. And now this person will now go to his child and will say to his son that, my son, tell me, how was I as a father? And the son will have a similar reply that, my dad, you gave me everything that I wanted, and everything that you never had, you gave it to me. You gave me a good house, good food, good clothes, good education. At times you wore shoes from Payless and you made sure I had the best Nikes. You wore shoes that didn't have no brand on it, but you made sure I had everything name brand. You made sure I had everything Derrick Rose. You made sure I had everything top notch. This man will say that, my son, I put you through college. I gave you a career. I did so much to you. How about you give me one deed? And the son will now reply back to his father, أُمِّهِ وَأَبِي وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ. I'm sorry, Dad. Today, I have to be selfish and I have to worry about myself. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he is that father to us, that he cared for us in this dunya and he will also care for us in the hereafter. He will also care for us in the hereafter, where our parents and everybody will run away from us. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will have his hands open and he will say, Ummati, Ummati. Where our parents will, they won't recognize us. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he will recognize us even though he has never seen us. Even though he has never met us, he will still recognize us. And he will still, that relationship that we have with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it will still be as strong as possible. So here Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he described himself as a father figure to the believers. And the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they automatically become the mother of the believers, Ummahatul Mu'mineen. Now, with that said, if the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are the mothers of the believers, it's extremely sad of our situation, of every single one of us, that unfortunately we know very little about our mothers. We forget about their likes and their dislikes and details about them and how they were and how their characteristics were, and it's details. It has came to a point that unfortunately we don't even know their names of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who also had the title Ummahatul Mu'mineen, meaning my mothers and your mothers. But it is important that when you see a deficiency, that you fulfill that deficiency. You fix it, you correct it, you justify it, you work on bettering it. So, a person, again, they should learn the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is not only the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but it's also the lives of the people that surrounded Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, including the Ummahatul Mu'mineen, including the Sahaba and Ajma'in, and also the enemies of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, knowing how strong was the opposition in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, the second nickname that she had, the Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi mentions here, was Abdullah. Now the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the children of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had 4 daughters. He had 4 daughters. Hazrat Zainab radiallahu ta'ala anha, Hazrat Ruqayya radiallahu ta'ala anha, Kulthum, and Fatima radiallahu ta'ala. And there are different narrations about the sons of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but we have 2, Qasim and Abdullah. And then there was another son who was born later on. His name was Ibrahim. So 4 daughters and 3 sons. From these 7 children of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, 6 of these children were born by Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha. Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha, the first wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, she was the mother of all of the children of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam except for Ibrahim, the youngest son. And Ibrahim, his mother was Maria Qibtiyya, the free slave of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, the nickname Abdullah means the mother of Abdullah. Now the questions arise, if the Ummahatul Mu'mineen, besides the Khadija radiallahu anha, none of them had children with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were not allowed to remarry. Why? Because they were the mothers of the believers, and her son cannot get married. Why? How did the Aisha get this nickname? Anybody? This name Abdullah. How does the Aisha get this nickname? As Aisha radiallahu anha, she had a sister by the name of Asma bint Abu Bakr. Asma bint Abu Bakr, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was migrating to Makkah al-Mukarramah, at that time as Asma radiallahu anha, she became famous as Zatul Niqatain, the lady with 2 waistbands. Why? Because she had a waistband and she ripped it in half, and in one half of the waistband she would put some food in there and tie it and give it to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and she would tie the other waistband. Now, with that said, at the time of Hijrah, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was up in the mountains, right? He was up in the mountains, and the kuffar were hunting for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, hunting for Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and there was a bounty on the heads of both Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and that bounty was of 100 camels. And 100 camels, if you were to even calculate in today's day and age, a camel is around $1,000. A person who has a jinayat and has to sacrifice a camel today, in today's day and age, they have to pay around $1,000. So 100 camels, just in today's day and age, would be around $100,000. That was a bounty, right? And if you catch both, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr done, that's $200,000. Right? So even people in today's day and age, they would run after a bounty like that. So the whole Makkah al-Mukarramah was after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they were after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Now the question arises, why didn't anybody follow Asma radiallahu anha? Asma radiallahu anha, the daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Right? Everybody knew that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were good friends, and they traveled together. But why didn't anybody follow Asma radiallahu anha? Asma radiallahu anha, she used to go every day and give Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam food and give food to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. But why didn't anybody follow Asma radiallahu anha? The answer to this is very simple, because at that time, Asma radiallahu anha, people knew that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he's hiding somewhere, where is he hiding? In the mountains. He's hiding in the mountains. Everybody knew he's hiding in the mountains. They're somewhere in the mountains. By that time, Asma radiallahu anha, she was 8 months pregnant. She was expecting a child. And even though in this state, while she was expecting a child, as Asma radiallahu anha, she would climb up a mountain to deliver food for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then, subhanAllah, this mountain, I remember when I was around 18 years old, we went for Umrah, and we climbed up the mountain of Nur, Jabal Nur, where the cave of Hira is. And when we got up to the mountain of cave of Hira, it took us an hour and a half. At that time, we were 18 years old, we were young, we had the Jawani Josh in us. We climbed up this mountain, and when we got to this mountain, feeling like we're on top of the world, we looked up and we saw the mountain of Thawr, which is even taller, which was even bigger. And it opened your eyes to imagine what took a group of young men, to climb up an hour and a half. And that's in today's modification, that they have somewhat stairs there that you can easily climb. Hazrat Asma radiallahu anha, she used to climb up to deliver food to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam while she was 8 months pregnant with Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anha. Now you look at our women, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless them, when they are expecting, they go through so many difficulties. Right? Even walking, or even the smallest daily activities become really hard on them. Why? Because they're actually bearing another human being inside their body. Everything changes for them. But here Asma radiallahu anha, she would walk up the mountain and deliver food to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Asma radiallahu anha, when she came to Madinah to Munawwara, when she migrated to Madinah to Munawwara, she had a son there. That son's name was Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anha. And Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anha, he came out to be an amazing Sahabi of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And inshallah, someday we'll speak about Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anha, and how he later on became Amir al-Mu'mineen, the leader of the believers. But he had only spent 10 years in the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because he was born in Madinah to Munawwara after Hijrah, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Medina for how many years? 10 years. So he was only with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for a total of 10 years. And now what would happen, that once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Aisha had moved to Medina to Munawwara, Abdullah bin Zubayr, this 10-year-old kid, maximum 10-year-old kid, he would always be in his aunt's house. He would always be in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha. Why? Because it was open access for him. He could go whatever he wants. It's my aunt's house. But at the same time, he would get access to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He can use the nephew card and get access to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So saying that this is my aunt's house, he would always be in the house of Aisha radiallahu anha. And people used to say that it looks like this is the son of Aisha. And he's always at the house of Aisha radiallahu anha. But Abdullah bin Zubayr, he was playing his cards. Right? Why? Because he got extra time with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had left this world, Abdullah bin Zubayr would spend a lot of time at the house of the Aisha radiallahu anha. And this is why the Aisha radiallahu anha received the nickname of Abdullah. Abdullah, and this was referring to Abdullah bin Zubayr radiallahu anha. Now, as Aisha radiallahu anha, she was born in the second and third year of Nabuwah. After Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam received prophethood, she was born in the second and third year of Nabuwah. And when Ummahatul Mu'mineen, when the mother of the believers, the Khadija radiallahu anha, passed away, she passed away in the 10th year of Nabuwah, the year known as Amr Huzn, the year of sorrow. And when Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha passed away, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was deeply affected by this. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was in love with Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha. He was legitimately in love with Hazrat Khadija. Right? And I'm not sure if I may mention this, that many years later, after the Khadija radiallahu anha had passed away, and years later, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he captures the captors of Badr. And people come with different things to free their relatives, to free the captive of Badr. And one man comes and he presents a necklace to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he looks at this necklace and he begins to cry. He begins to cry. Now this is teaching us a lesson. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam here, he's teaching us a lesson on how to be a husband. Right? Often our wives ask us, how does this look? It looks good. On our phone, we're not even looking, it looks good, don't worry. Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he began to cry. Why did he cry? Because just by looking at this necklace, he recognized this necklace. And just imagine those thoughts try to flash through the mind of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that this necklace is a necklace of Hazrat Khadija. And he probably remembered all the different times Hazrat Khadija wore it for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he remembered the time that his daughter Zainab was getting married, and Hazrat Khadija gifted this necklace to Hazrat Zainab. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then asked, where did you get this necklace from? This necklace is my wife's necklace. She gave it to my daughter. And the man said that your daughter sent this necklace. And long story short, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that can we free this captive? And this necklace now belongs to the Muslims. And he says, if it's okay, I would like to keep this as a memory of my wife, Hazrat Khadija. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he loved Hazrat Khadija, and he loved Hazrat Khadija so deeply that at times he would begin to praise Hazrat Khadija, right? Teaching us another lesson that it's okay to praise your wife, right? But we find it ibda to praise our wife, especially in front of other people. We don't praise our wife, we praise ourselves, and we show that our wives are below us, and that we wear the pants in the house. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would begin to praise the Hazrat Khadija, and he would praise them in front of his other wives. And as Aisha, she would become jealous, and she would say to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah, you praise the Khadija as if we're not even here. Are we invincible? Can you not see us? You're praising Hazrat Khadija as if we're not even here. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, all he would say is, Kanat Khadija Khadija. The Khadija, she was just Khadija. She was at a different level. Right? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he really loved Hazrat Khadija. In the 10th year, the year of sorrow, Hazrat Khadija left this world and left Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Hazrat Khadija passed away, the companions saw the effect that this had on Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And there are narrations that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would barely come out of his house after these two events. The passing away of Abu Talib without Islam, and the passing away of Khadija. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he remained in seclusion. Until finally, a Sahabiya, a female companion of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by the name of Khawla bint Hakim, she approached Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and she said to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rasulullah, I think you should get married. I think you should get married again. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he then asked Khawla bint Hakim that who do you have in mind? And Khawla bint Hakim, she proposed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that if you want to get married to someone that is elder, then you have Sauda bint Zam'a. And if you want to get married to someone younger, then you have the daughter of your friend Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, Aisha bint Abu Bakr. Right? So now, and the reason why we're talking about this is because people commonly accuse Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and point fingers at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam because of the age of Aisha radiallahu anha. But here we see who proposed this thought. Somebody else proposed this thought. It wasn't Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's, it wasn't his idea, but somebody else proposed the thought. And the person who proposed the thought, was that person male or female? Female. So it shows that this was absolutely okay. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he first said, it's not going to happen. Why? Wait. First, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said to Khawla bint Hakim, go ahead and ask both of them. Ask Sauda bint Zam'a and ask Aisha bint Abu Bakr. And Aisha bint Abu Bakr, when Khawla bint Hakim went to Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala for her daughter's hand, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, look, I need some time. I need some time. It's not going to happen. Why? Because I need some time. Why did Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu need time? The reason why Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu needed time, because as Aisha radiallahu ta'ala, she was already engaged. She was already engaged. So this is another fact, this is another reason, another proof that at that time, people matured early. People had a sense of responsibility at an early age. In today's day and age, we reach a sorry point of time in this world where people do not mature no matter what age they become. Forget the age of 6 or 10 or 15. There are people that are grown men that are 30 years old, 40 years old, and that still wear Hello Kitty socks. Right? They don't mature. But at that time, people understood their responsibilities and they matured quickly. And as Aisha radiallahu anha, she was from those people who matured. Number one, a female sahabiya, she was the one who proposed the thought. And number two, as Aisha radiallahu anha, she was already engaged to Jubair bin Mut'im, a man by the name of Jubair bin Mut'im. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he went to the father of Jubair bin Mut'im and he said to Mut'im bin Uday that our children have been engaged for some time now. What do you want to do? Do you want to have them married? And Mut'im bin Uday, he said to Abu Bakr, do you have any plans on leaving this religion of Islam? Are you going to leave Islam? And Abu Bakr said, no, there's no way I'm leaving Islam. Then Mut'im bin Uday said, then it's the best thing that we separate, we break this engagement. We break this engagement. And then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he married to Zawda bint Zama and Aisha bint Abu Bakr. However, when he got married to Aisha bint Abu Bakr, Aisha did not move into with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam until after Hijrah. Until after Hijrah, for another couple of years, she stayed with her mother and father. And until after Hijrah, then Aisha moved in with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, another fact to be remembered, that when as Aisha and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions had migrated to Medina to Munawwara, it was Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala who suggested to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that Rasulullah, when are you going to take your bride? When will you take your bride? So Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala, he was the father of the bride. He was the one that proposed this idea that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, my daughter is mature, take her to your house. And as Aisha radiallahu anha, she came to the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As Aisha radiallahu anha, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave as Aisha a nickname. Right? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he gave as Aisha a nickname. Another lesson to be a husband. That to call your wife by something with love. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would call Aisha radiallahu anha Humaira. And the historians write that the Aisha radiallahu anha, she used to have this redness in her cheeks, and because of which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would call her Humaira. Now, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's relationship with Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, as we spoke earlier, that his relationship with Hazrat Khadija radiallahu anha was unique, and his relationship with Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha was unique as well. Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would give Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha special attention. Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, she was at the age where she wanted to learn from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We spoke about the previous companions and how many ahadith they narrated. The number of hadiths that Aisha radiallahu anha narrated were 2,210 hadiths. 2,210 hadiths. And at the wafat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, she was around 18 years old. So an 18-year-old learning 2,010 ahadith, that is no joke. The Aisha radiallahu anha, she deserved that special attention from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, we spoke that she was mature and she was soaked in the knowledge from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether it be the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the matters of fiqh. That later on, after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left this world, the other companions, they would come and consult with Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha about matters of tafsir, about matters of fiqh, and about the matters of hadith. So she was a master in all fields. Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw this potential and he gave Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha this special attention. Now, as Aisha radiallahu anha, her father's name was, of course, Abu Bakr radiallahu anha, and her mother's name was Rumman. Her sister's name, as we mentioned before, was Asma bint Abu Bakr, and she had a couple of brothers, but from those brothers there's one by the name of Abdullah, and another one by the name of Abdurrahman. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in one hadith, he makes mention that the two favorite names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are Abdullah and Abdurrahman, and these were names that Abu Bakr had given his children. As Aisha radiallahu anha, some of the main events that as Aisha radiallahu anha was a part of was of course the incident, the major event of the incident of Ifk, of the accusation that was put on Hazrat Aisha. Hazrat Aisha, she of course was tahira, she was of course was pure, and this was the accusation that Abdullah bin Ubay bin Surul, the leader of the Munafiqs, he made on Hazrat Aisha pointing a finger. Of course, if you point a finger at Ummahat al-Mu'minin, you're pointing a finger at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and of course, if you're pointing a finger at Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're pointing a finger at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then there was an incident of honey where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they got together and they made a plan about some honey that one of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would give Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because of this honey, he would spend some time at his wife's house, consuming this honey. So then they made a plan that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam comes out of her house and he comes to any of our houses, we'll say that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's a bit of a foul smell to your mouth. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one wife said this, second wife said this, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he finally said that, I'm not going to go to her house, I'm not going to drink from this honey. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, later on, he found out about this and he became very upset with his Aisha and the companions and the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Hafsa radiallahu anha. But then he understood that the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they only did this out of love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Out of love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once speaking to Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, giving us another lesson on how to be a husband. How to be a husband. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once speaking to Hazrat Aisha radiallahu anha, he said to Hazrat Aisha, I understand when you are upset with me, and I know when you're happy with me. When you're upset with me, I understand. When you're happy with me, I understand. And Aisha asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, how can you tell? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Aisha, when you are happy with me, you swear by the Lord of Muhammad. You say that I swear by the Lord of Muhammad. Bi Rabbi Muhammad. And when you're upset with me, you swear by the Lord of Ibrahim. You use the name of Ibrahim. So this shows that wives, today's wives and the wives back then, they had the similar qualities that they easily become upset with their husbands. So if this happens to you, it's nothing new. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went through something very similar to this. As Aisha radiallahu anha, she passed away at the age of 48. This was 48 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had left this world, and this was the 58th year of Hijrah. Now in this hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, she makes mention, من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد. That whoever does an act, whoever innovates something in our matter, من أحدث, whoever innovates something in our matter, في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه, which is not already in it, فهو رد. Then that act will be rejected. And then Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, he brings another narration. So first, after Imam Nawawi rahmatullahi alayhi, after he brings his first narration, he says, Rawah al-Bukhari wa Muslim. That this narration was mentioned in the Muslim of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi and Imam Muslim rahmatullahi alayhi. Then he says, and also there is a riwayat in Imam Muslim rahmatullahi alayhi's Sahih, and that is, Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa rad. Very close meaning, but whoever does an act that which we have not commanded. Man amila amalan, whoever does an act which we have not commanded, fahuwa raddun, then the act will be rejected. Now, if you notice, both of these narrations, after the second narration, there is no mention of a different narrator. Meaning the narrator of both hadiths are the same. And actually, both of these hadiths can be found in Muslim Sharif as well as Bukhari Sharif. The second hadith can also be found in Bukhari Sharif, but however, it is from the Mu'allaqat, it is not from the Sahih hadith of Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi. Now, what does this teach us? This teaches us that when mentioning a hadith, the exact words, if a person does not use the exact words, then it is okay. Why? Because the Aisha radiallahu anha, she narrates two hadiths with very similar meanings. Man ahdatha fi amrina hada ma laysa minhu, whoever innovates something in our matter which is not there, fahuwa raddun. And the second hadith, the Aisha radiallahu anha says, man amila amalan Whoever does an act which is not in that which we have not commanded, فَهُوَ رَدٌّ. So both of these ahadith are very similar meaning, but as Aisha radiallahu anha, she in this one of these hadiths she's using her own words. Now the condition of this is that as long as the meaning is not lost. So let's say that you are talking to somebody and you are mentioning a hadith. The best thing is to know the actual words of the hadith. There's nothing better than knowing the actual words that came out of the mouth of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But let's say for some reason, you cannot remember the words, then you can mention the moral or the gist of the hadith and say, "O kama qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." We commonly hear this phrase, "O kama qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said something like this. Right? So again, the best of the matter is that you mention the actual hadith. However, if you do not remember the actual hadith, then you can say the moral or get the message across and say, "O kama qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Just make it clear that you want Rasulullah to the nearest meaning. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said something along the nearest meaning to this. Now, these two hadiths, they pertain to something called bid'ah. Right? Now, bid'ah, it's one of those taboo subjects in Islam that people, do not like to talk about. But bid'ah, first of all, let's define the word bid'ah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in one verse, He refers to Himself as Badi'u samawati wal ard. He says, Badi'u samawati wal ard. Using the same word as bid'ah. Bid'ah is something that is new and there is no example of it before. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I am Badi'. I am an innovator. Badi'u samawati wal ard, and I have innovated the samawat wal ard, and there was no example. There was nothing like it before I created it. Right? So one is you make something and there was already an example, there was already instructions on how to do it. That's not badi. You are just making it. But badi is, the thought is yours, everything is yours, and you come up with this idea. Here you are, an inventor. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this verse, Badi'u samawati wal ard, He refers to Himself as an inventor, right? So the word badi, the word bid'ah, it comes from to invent something that there is no example of it previously. Now, there are three definitions of a bid'ah. For a certain act, for any act to be a bid'ah, there are three definitions. Number one, that this act, that there is something similar to it in Sharia. Something similar to it in Sharia. You're taking something that is in Sharia and modifying it, changing it a little bit. That's definition number one. Definition number two, that you are doing this act with the intention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased, or with intention of reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the purpose of you doing this act is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or is to receive reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number three, that there is no basis of this in Islam. When something hits all three of these definitions, now this would be called a bid'ah. Now here's a question. We understand that anything that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't do, say, or Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't approve, or the companions didn't do, or the companions did not say, is a bid'ah. It's something new. It wasn't there at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it was then brought into our religion. So a question arises: eating biryani, is it a bid'ah? Or eating a samosa, is it a bid'ah? Why? Because it wasn't there at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is no mention of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate khatti dal. There is no mention of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had talawa gosh. There is no mention of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ate pakora, biryani, samosas, bhaji. So are all of these things bid'ah or not? Why not? Because of condition number 2. We do these acts, but we don't do it with the intention of reward. Nobody says that by eating samosa you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Or actually might move you further away, might make you lazy and make you not want to praise Allah. That's a different, But we do these acts without intention of reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nobody thinks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward them from eating a little bit of biryani. So anything that we do with intention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward us. Right? If we say that eating biryani is sunnah, or eating biryani is faraz, now this has become a bid'ah. Or we say eating samosa is a part of our deen. Right? Now this becomes a bid'ah. But as long as a person does not do it with intention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward him for it, then or he will get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or it will please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that this act will not be counted as a bid'ah. Now, if in Islam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, first of all, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, at the time of giving khutbah, he would first say something called khutbatul hajat. The khutbah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from time to time, it would be different. But first Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, preferably he would read khutbatul hajat. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu, wa nasta'inuhu, wa nastaghfiruhu, wa nu'minu bihi, wa natawakkal alayhi. Just praising Rasulullah, praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and sending blessings upon Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the very basics, hajat means, the bare minimum, what must be said. Right? A Jummah khutbah is a reminder that everybody must be reminded about the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And everybody must be reminded about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And these certain acts of our religion, everybody must be reminded. Now, part of khutbatul hajat, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would also say, وَكُلُّ مُحْدَثٍ بِدْعَةٍ. Every innovation in Islam, it is a bid'ah. And every innovation, every bid'ah, it is dalala. It is misguidance. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was very particular about setting aside new deeds and innovations in Islam. And this is why Abdullah ibn Mas'ud and Abdullah ibn Umar, they have many narrations about following, fattabi'u, right? Following and not innovating. Right? So the question arises, if we cannot innovate in Islam, if Islam does not need inventions, what does Islam need? So that we answer that question by saying, Islam requires us to follow. To follow what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has left behind. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِ. Do ittiba'. Right? قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ. Say, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is speaking to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and saying, say, O Rasulullah, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ, if you love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then what you have to do is, you have to follow. Not to innovate. Your job is not to become an innovation and bring new things into Islam, but your job is to follow the path of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In another place, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sirat al-mustaqim, وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطٌ مُسْتَقِيمٌ, that this is the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you must follow it. You must follow the path. فَاتَّبِعُوهُ. You must follow this path. So this deen of Islam, it doesn't require us to innovate and to bring new things into it, but it requires us to follow those things that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has left behind. And Rasulullah, we made mention that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, in the final moments of his life, said that تَرَقْتُ فِيكُمْ أَمْرَيْنِ. I'm leaving two things back for you. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he didn't leave any dirham or dinar, right? He didn't leave a wealth or a kingdom behind. But what he left behind was two things. تَرَقْتُ فِيكُمْ أَمْرَيْنِ. If you hold on to them and follow them, it will guide you into Jannah. However, if you let go of them and you forget them, it will lead you into darkness. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Quran wa sunnati. I have left behind my Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I have also left behind my actions. And Rasulullah, Aisha radiallahu anha, she was approached by some companions, and the companions said to Aisha radiallahu anha, tell us, how was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? How was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam behind closed doors? Behind closed doors, at a time where people are different. Tell us, how was Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And Aisha radiallahu anha, she replied back, Have you not read the Quran? Have you not read the Quran? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was a walking, talking, living example of the Quran. His life was the Quran. Everything that was in the Quran, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was an example of it. He acted upon it. And this was the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He spoke from there. He spoke from the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the actions that he did is what we have behind. So these two things that we have behind, so these two things that we have behind. Number one, the Quran of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now Ibn Qayyum, he very beautifully, he describes the harms of bid'ah, right? A person who innovates, how deep of water they're in. He describes this by saying that a sinner, a person who commits a sin, he understands to some point that this is a sin. What I'm doing is wrong. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran makes mention that every single human being has three types of nafs. There are three levels of nafs. Nafsul lawama, nafsul mutma'inna, nafsul lawama, nafsul amara. These are the three types of nafs Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran. That these are the three nafs that a person has, the three types of desires a person has. The number one is nafsul amara. That nafs, which is like a free horse that will go wherever it wants and it will do whatever it wants. This nafs will tell you to do bad. Right? This nafs, it will tell you to do bad, it will tell you to sin. It will make you want to, go against the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it will make you want to stay away from, good deeds. It will make you want to sin. And this is our own nafs. Right? The second nafs is nafs al-lawama. لا أقسم بيوم القيامة ولا أقسم بالنفس اللوامة. And this nafs, so the first nafs, if a person has this kind of nafs, the person needs to work on it. Why? Because their nafs will tell him to do bad, and now this person, he not only has shaitan as an enemy, he also has his nafs as an enemy. Right? So he has shaitan and he has his nafs enemy. The second type of nafs a person has is nafsul lawama. Nafsul lawama means malamat karna. Malamat karna, to translate it, is something that keeps taunting you. It makes you feel bad. Right? And this is, the general nafs that we have. That when you miss Fajr Salah, your nafs tells you, man, you should have woke up. If you're waking up for work, if you woke up 10-15 minutes early or half an hour early, you could have made your Fajr Salah. So anytime you do something bad, this nafs does not let you hear the end of it. Right? It tells you that this was wrong. You should have done like this. You should have done like this. You should stay away from the sins. You should pray your salat. This is nafsul lawama. And this is still a very good type of nafs. Why? Because it is your conscience. Your conscience is actually still alive inside. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes mention of the third type of nafs, and He says, Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna. O content nafs. The nafs that is content. It doesn't desire to sin. It doesn't desire to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first nafs, it desired to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second nafs, if it slipped and if it disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it would correct you and it would taunt you about that. And the third nafs is Ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna. The nafs that is content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Irji ila rabbihi radiyatan mardiyah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell a nafs that is mutma'inna, Irji ila rabbi, that return to your Lord radiyatan mardiyah, in a way that not only are you pleased with Allah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's also pleased with you. Return to your Creator in the way that you're happy with Allah. You're happy with everything Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's also happy with you that you want, yes, good job. You passed the test of this dunya. Right? So these are three types of nafs, and the reason why we're talking about these three types of nafs here, because when a person commits a sin, his nafs does his malamat. His nafs taunts him and tells him that what you did is bad. And he feels guilty about the sin that he does. But it is our own weaknesses that we still do these sins. But when a person, Ibn Qayyim writes, that when a person falls into an act of bid'ah, what was the second condition? He thinks that it's a part of Islam. And if he thinks that it's a part of Islam and he thinks that it's a part of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased by this, then this person will never stop. He will never repent. Right? But to repent, to be forgiven from any sin, there are conditions to be forgiven from a sin. Right? To be forgiven from a sin, there are conditions. Number one, that you must be remorseful about the sin. Right? Condition, and we will talk about this when we talk about the hadith of Tawbah, but we'll quickly go over the three conditions. Number one, that you are remorseful about the sin, you regret the sin. Right? Not that you're boasting about the sin, you're telling everybody that that night was amazing, but astaghfirullah. Right? Not like that. But you are actually remorseful and you're regretful about the sin. Number two, you leave the sin. Right? You leave the sin instead of listening to a song, astaghfirullah, this is bad. This is bad. These words are horrible. You should hear these words. These words are horrible. Right? The second condition, that you leave the sin. And number three, you promise, you make a firm intention to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you'll never return to the sin again. So if these are the three conditions of repenting from a sin, now this person who thinks that this is a part of his religion and he expects to be rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he can never leave the sin. Why? Because he thinks it's a part, and he won't be remorseful. Why? Because he accepts that this is a part of my religion. Right? And all three of the conditions are not met in this person, cannot be forgiven from this sin. That is, again, we hope for the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He will forgive whatever sin He wants. Even without our repentance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala still has the capability of forgiving our sins, except for shirk. So Ibn Qayyim writes that this sin, bid'ah, is very dangerous. Why? Because the person who falls into this person does not realize the sin that he's in. Now, there are 7 prerequisites of any action for any action to be a bid'ah. Right? So this is the nichor. This is the juice, the rust, the syrup of the whole talk. The core of the whole talk, that there are 6 prerequisites of any action to be a bid'ah. So, if a person was sleeping or a person was in the back texting or doing on their phone, you don't have to be in the back to be on your phone. You can be in the back of your phone in the front as well. But if a person wasn't paying attention, they just listen to these 6 prerequisites of what is a bid'ah. Of any action, if it meets any of these prerequisites, then that action could possibly be bid'ah. Number 1, the first prerequisite is, what is the cause? Why are you doing this action? And this links to the first hadith that we read. What was the first hadith we read? إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The actions are based upon intentions. Now, for example, a person comes to the masjid and he comes to pray salah. Action is good. Niyyah is good. That's fine. However, if a person comes to the masjid and let's say, by example, he comes on the 12th of Rabi'ul Awwal, thinking that is the birthday of Rasulullah and he wants to perform the mawlid. Now, the action is good in coming to the masjid, but however, the cause, the intention is incorrect. The intention is incorrect. Why? Because one of the conditions of a bid'ah is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had the capability of doing it. But yet Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not do it. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he wanted, he could have celebrated the mawlid. Right? He could have celebrated the mawlid, this is my birthday. This is the day that I came into the world. Let's have a blast. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't. Right? So one of the conditions of a bid'ah is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he didn't actually do it and he had the capability to do it. So now the cause in both of these, the action is the same. That the person, he comes to the masjid, he comes for salah, second he comes for the mawlid. The action is the same, but the intention is different. And now this intention has corrupted this action, and now this action will be a bid'ah. Number 2, the type. So you have the cause, now you have the type. For example, when a person does his udhiyah, he performs hajj, and he sacrifices, or either adha comes and he sacrifices, or at the time of the aqiqah, he sacrifices an animal. Now, The animals that are meant to be sacrificed, you have a cow, you have a goat, you have a sheep, you have a ram, you have a camel. But now this person says that, I can't find any of these animals, and what I'm going to do, and these animals right here, a goat, a cow, a camel, they're not the best animals. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get a tagra horse. I'm going to get a strong horse, and I'm going to sacrifice a horse. And the horse costs more as well, right? So my sacrifice will be even better. My sacrifice will be even better because I'm paying more for the horse, and the horse is a strong animal. Now because the type is incorrect in this action of his, right? His action is right of sacrificing. However, the type of the animal that he's sacrificing, because that is incorrect, and he's doing it thinking that it is, he can please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This will be the second prerequisite of a bid'ah. Number 3, the amount. Right? Now let's say a person, he says to himself that, today is the day of Jummah, and while everybody in this Jamaat will read 3 rakats for Maghrib, I want to read 4 rakats, or 5 rakats, or 6 rakats. Right? Why? Because I'm a wali of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because I'm a friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I've reached a level of spirituality where 3 rakats is not enough for me, and I have to read 6, or I have to read 4. Right? Now, in this action, the amount is incorrect. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam had prescribed it to us that Maghrib Salah is only 3 rakats. If you want to pray extra nawafil, you could do that. You can pray your 2 rakat sunnah, you can pray your 2 rakat nafil, and if you want to do even more, then add 2 more rakats with the intention of 6 and make that into a wabil. But to change the actual amount of a salah with the intention of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now remember, we said there's something similar to Islam. Islam already has Isha Salah. It's something similar. And the person is doing it, why? Because he wants to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the third thing that we said, that there is no basis of it in Islam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam read 3. So if a person changes the amount and modifies it, then this will also be a bid'ah. On a side note, let's say, for example, the azkar of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam taught us a common tasbih known as tasbih Fatimi. Tasbih Fatimi, Hazrat Fatima radiallahu anha, she would do the household work by herself, to the point that on her hand she would get blisters. She would grind the flour with her own hands, and she would go and get the water and leather water bags and put it over her shoulder and come back to the part that she would have marks on her shoulder. Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu saw the hard work that the Fatima used to do, and he said to Hazrat Fatima that your father Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam just received some slaves. Why don't you go and ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam for a servant, somebody to help you with this work? Instead of you doing it yourself, you're the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You're the daughter of the leader of the believers. Go ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will give you a servant. As a Fatima, she goes to the gathering of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when she gets to the gathering, she sees that the other people that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving this wealth out to. He's distributing this wealth, and she comes home without asking Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She comes home. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that night he comes to the house of Ali and Fatima, and he says to Fatima that I saw that you came, but you just left. What was the matter? And then Fatima explains that this is my situation, and I thought that I'd come and ask you for somebody to help me, but I felt shy. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he then instructed the Fatima that, look, let me give you something better. Let me give you something better that will help you out more. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you more help. And he said that after every salah and before you go to sleep, read Subhanallah 33 times, read Alhamdulillah 33 times, and read Allahu Akbar 34 times. And now, because of this incident, this tasbih is known as tasbih Fatima. Tasbih Fatima, the tasbih that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he gave to Fatima radiallahu anha. Now again, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the prophets, they did not leave behind dirham or dinar, but they left behind this deen for us, and as well as he's giving his own daughter. This is what he's giving his own daughter. He could have gave his daughter, one of the slaves, but he said, let me give you something better. And this how is it better? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He'll help you in the dunya and He'll help you in the hereafter. This is a lesson Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is teaching us on how to be a good father. Right? He taught us how to be a good husband, but here He's teaching us how to be a good father as well. That you should put the tawakkul, the trust of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our children. Instill that trust of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Teach our children a lesson on trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and depending on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? Now, let's say a person, he says that, tasbih al-Fatimi. Instead of 33 times, I'm going to do it 37 times. Right? Can this person do this or not? Can he read, subhanAllah 37 times? Now, if this person does it for the intention, thinking that this is better for me, he says, this is better for me. I need 37 times. Why? Because it's better than me. Then this person will not be allowed to do it. Why? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has completed our religion and He has given us the perfect religion. He's given us a perfect religion. You do not need more than this. If you follow this, this will be enough for you. However, a person, he said that I just want to do some more azkar. I want to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala some more. Then there's no problem in that. However, if he says that this is better for me, then this person will not be allowed. Number 4, the fourth prerequisite of a bid'ah is that a person is not going against the manner. For instance, the correct manner of doing wudu is that a person does it in order. However, a person, he says that I'm going to do wudu backwards. Right? I'm going to do wudu backwards because the hardest part of wudu is putting my feet into the sink. My coworkers see me, people out, they look at me and they wonder why do I have my feet in the sink? So let me do that first, and then I'll do wudu backwards. Right? Now, if the manner of something is incorrect, then this will also fall under a bid'ah. That person, he does this manner, in the hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward him. Again, the manner is, the order is incorrect, then this will be classified as bid'ah. The 5th prerequisite is the time. Right? If a person changes a certain time, now let's say that in America we say that we have 5 working days: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And Friday being a working day, praying Jummah on Friday is a hassle. Why? Because you have to take time off from work. You have to schedule your lunch time, and you have to come to the masjid at that time. And let's say you get stuck in the masjid parking lot, right, where they're not letting you into the parking lot, and that causes you to miss Jummah, and you have to wait for the second one. Or you get stuck in the parking lot, and you're backed up in the car behind you, you're stuck in the parking lot. Or let's say you come into the masjid, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forbid, again, it's both ways. The khatib should be thoughtful, and the musalli should be patient as well. But let's say you get a khatib that goes over 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Now this becomes a problem. Why? Because your boss wants you back at work, and then again, because the fact that you're getting time off to come to praise Allah, that is that itself is something big, and then the khatib should be mindful as well. But let's say a person says that Jummah Friday, it doesn't fit me. It doesn't fit my schedule. Why? Because I'm working. How about we pray Jummah on Saturday? I'm free. I'm doing nothing. Mornings I watch my cartoons. I wake up and I stay in bed. I watch my cartoons, and then I'll just come to Jummah and pray Jummah in the masjid on Saturday. Now, because the time is wrong, then this will also be called a bid'ah. And the final prerequisite is that the place be correct. There are certain acts that are restricted by time, and then there are certain acts that are restricted by place. For instance, a man says that going to Hajj, it's a big hassle. Why? Because in one place, in one city, there are millions of people that gather. So what I will do, instead of going to Hajj there, I'll bring a small display of the Kaaba, and I'll go to my living room, walk around it 7 times, and then I'll perform the rituals of Hajj in my house by finding one of my family members and stoning them, right? And doing all the different things in my house. Because the place, the location is incorrect, this will also be classified as a bid'ah, right? So these 6 things have to be kept in mind, right? So an act doesn't fall into bid'ah. Now, to wrap up today's class, Hafiz ibn Rajab, a great scholar in many different fields of Islam, he looks at this hadith and says that people commonly look at this hadith and immediately they start thinking a bid'ah, which again is the theme of this hadith in which Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is talking about. But Hafiz ibn Rajab, he looks at this hadith and he says that the lesson to be learned by this hadith is that a person should always keep in mind of his actions. He should keep in mind of his action, what is he doing and why is he doing it. He should make sure his intentions are right, and he should always remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching. Meaning, look at the bigger picture. Look at the bigger picture and make sure our actions are correct. And this is, this is him teaching us that it's not just about pointing fingers at somebody else and saying, that's bid'ah, this is bid'ah, this is bid'ah, this is bid'ah. Right? Just the fact that person is trying to practice his deen, that person should at least make that sort of effort. Follow, in this world, we look for tutorials and we look for instructions, and anything that we do, we look at how to become successful and how to lose weight and how to do this and how to do that. Why? Because there are other people that came before us and they have succeeded. So just like this in Islam, there are people that have came before us, which of course are the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the companions and the tabi'in and tabi'in, who have came and they have succeeded, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said that I'm pleased with them. So you have these perfect examples, these perfect tutorials, these perfect instructions on how to live your life and how to practice upon your deen. So a person should, instead of trying to innovate and bring something new into Islam, just follow upon this instruction that he already has in front, follow the tutorial of the companions that he has, follow the tutorial of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and this inshallah will suffice. Again, this hadith is narrated on the necessity of al-Mu'mineen, Abdullah, as Aisha radiallahu anha. As Aisha radiallahu anha, she was the daughter of Abu Bakr radiallahu anha, and Rumman. She was given this nickname al-Mu'mineen because she was the wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a father figure to all of us, and his wives are known as the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. A person should make an effort to learn about the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why? Because they are our mothers. They are our mothers, and the way that we know our brothers, our sisters, our family, then we should know the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the same way. She was called Abdullah. She didn't have any children of her own, but she was known as Abdullah. Why? Because of as Asma radiallahu anha, her sister son Abdullah bin Zubair radiallahu anha, and he would frequently visit the house of his aunt Aisha radiallahu anha while Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was alive, and even after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away, they had a very close relationship, and this is why she was known as Abdullah. She narrates 2 hadiths: "Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa raddun," and also "Man amila amalan laysa alayhi amruna fahuwa raddun." 2 similar hadiths narrated in Imam Bukhari rahmatullah's Sahih. But however, the wording are different, which teaches us that when it comes to a hadith, then the words, as long as the meaning does not change, the words can be different. However, when reading Quran, the word has to be exact. The word has to be exact. You cannot use the nearest of meaning. But however, at the same time, preferably the best option is to learn the words of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to utter the exact words that the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said. Right? So the Aisha, she mentions these 2 hadiths, both of them have the very same meaning. Whoever innovates something in our religion that is not already there, then فَهُوَ رَدٌّ, it will be rejected. And at the same time, whoever does the action that we have not commanded, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam have not commanded, فَهُوَ رَدٌّ, then it will be rejected. We talked about the 3 definitions of bid'ah. That number 1, there is a prior example in Islam already that exists, and this person, he does it with the intention, which is golden, which is key, that a person does intention with the intention that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be pleased with him and he will get reward for it. And number three, there is no basis of this action in Islam. In this Islam, it does not need innovation, but it needs follower, submission. Islam requires submission. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us the names that we are Muslims. We submit our will to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي وَأَنَّ هَذَا صِرَاطٌ مُسْتَقِيمٌ فَاتَّبِعُوا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He instructs us to follow. Why? Because we have perfect examples, and that's why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent to this dunya to be an example that we follow. Then Ibn Qayyim rahmatullahi alayhi, he makes mention that a person that does a sin, he is in deep water. The person that does a bid'ah, he's in deep water. Why? Because that person never realizes that he's committing a sin. He doesn't realize that he's doing something bad. But a person that commits a sin, he actually realizes. Why? Because his nafs al-ammara, nafs al-lawama, nafs al-mutmainna, nafs al-lawama, his nafs beats him up and says that you should stop this. But a person who's doing a bid'ah, he didn't think that this is a part of this is against my religion. He thinks it's a part of my religion. That's why this person, he will never stop. He will never ask for forgiveness. And we also spoke that to ask for forgiveness, there are three conditions for any forgiveness. Number one, a person is remorseful. Number two, a person leaves the sin. Number three, a person makes firm intention never to return back to the sin. Then we talked about the six prerequisites of any act being a bid'ah. We talked about the cause. A person must have the intention. You can do the same act, but the wrong intention, and that can become a bid'ah, an innovation into Islam. Number two, the type. The person can make a sacrifice and goat. Sacrificing here is good, but sacrificing the wrong animal, the wrong type, it will become an innovation, something new into Islam. Number three, the amount. In Islam, there are certain things where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was specific about the amount. Maghrib salah is 3 rakats, Fajr salah is 2 rakats. However, a person wants to become a allama and says that I'm going to multiply and time this and pray 7 rakats or 8 rakats for Fajr and 8 rakats for Maghrib. This will not be accepted. Then you have to do it in the correct manner. If a person goes against the order or goes against the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to fit his own needs or to think that it's a part of Islam, then this will also be an innovation. And then the time and the place, it has to be correct as well. That you cannot change the time and you cannot change the place for certain things. Then we also spoke about Imam Shafi. Actually, before we leave, Imam Shafi rahmatullahi alayhi, he says something very beautiful. Imam Shafi rahmatullahi alayhi, he says that anything that is brought into the deen, a new act that is brought into the deen, that it does not go against the Quran and the Sunnah, the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it does not go against the teaching of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Basically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not speak about this. There is nothing similar to it. Then this will be, he makes mention that this will be a bid'ah mahmuda, a bid'ah that will be praised, a good. That's okay. But however, if it goes against the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and it goes against the teaching of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then this will be bid'ah dhalla. This will be a misguiding bid'ah. Right? So this last thing, the reason why I thought is very important, that sometimes we might say that there are new things in our religion that help us, that make us a better Muslim, but Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he did not do. But as long as it does not contradict the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it does not contradict the teaching of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There is nothing similar, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say you do this and you're doing that. But it's something totally different. Time advances, technology advances, and let's say for instance, you say that reading Quran on your phone, is that a bid'ah? Why? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam didn't read the Quran on his phone. Right? This will not be a bid'ah. Why? Because it doesn't contradict the teaching of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the teaching of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I just thought it was important to make mention of this beautiful saying of Imam Shafi rahmatullahi. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless Imam Shafi rahmatullahi for clarifying this matter, as well as Imam Ibn Hafiz Ibn Rajab rahmatullahi, and all the people that we gain our knowledge from, including the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to learn about the lives of the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to protect ourselves and protect our progeny from any innovation into Islam. and may we become true followers of the deen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanallah.